Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Gabe and Matt, ESC United, your favorite Eurovision channel. This is Mattitude, yet another episode where we talk about, you guessed it right, Eurovision, because that's what we do here. And it's been almost a week since the Eurovision Song Contest 22 started. I think in an hour from now, if you travel back in time, this is when the show would kick. So everyone's probably right now getting ready to get their snacks and drinks ready, do some final chores, and sit down in their chair. Gabe, we both were in beautiful Turin, and we both had to travel back. I think you stayed until Monday, if I'm not mistaken. How was your journey back? Sad, happy?
So I was obviously very sad to leave. I'm very glad I didn't leave on the Sunday, given that I got in on Sunday morning at about 6 o'clock in the morning. But I had a good journey back. It was sad that it was over, really, because what you build after you've been to Eurovision a few times is this massive group of people who are there every year, and you're just spending all of this great time with your friends. And then at the end of the week, you all have to leave. And it's always sad at the end. But I also had a post-Eurovision glow of pride for once.
Yes. And we'll talk about that for sure in a moment, because it was an interesting year in terms of results. But yeah, on the other hand, I had to travel all the way to the United States, California on top of it, Sunday morning. So the show was over, like, what time? Like 1 o'clock, 1:50. I don't remember what time the show was over. And then, of course, I was in the press center until like 2:30 or something like that. And then at 5 a.m., my taxi picked me up. So it could take me to the bus stop about 20 minutes away. So I could take the bus to Milan's airport. So then I could take the COVID test to get to America, then get on a plane at noon local time to have a 7.5-hour flight to New York, spend the day there so I can leave in the morning to California. So it was a long journey, and I loved how we always talk in our chats, all that stuff, and everyone, I'm still awake. I'm like, I'm gonna be awake for another 24 hours, bitches. So don't even start. So that was my journey, but as you always know, it was totally worth it. I think this year it was a little different because of when I booked my flights and stuff, we didn't know what the COVID situation would be. And one thing I tried to prevent is like me having to go through 2 different COVID protocols in different countries, like flying to the UK and then to, so I'm like, I'm just going to find a flight that goes straight to Italy. But in order to find that, I had to fly to the East Coast and all that stuff. I will never, ever do that again. I learned my lesson, and I'll just fly and deal with everything else that comes along with it, because it was just the longest journey ever. But I'm not here to complain, of course, which I am, but that's not the purpose of this live stream. We're here to reflect on what happened in the Eurovision world. I want to say, everyone, thank you in the chat for joining us today and been joining us throughout the entire weeks at Eurovision. And it's very important, I throw that out, right, that you continue to support ESC United if you can throughout the year, because that is how we stay in business, for the lack of a better word, because we'll provide content all around the year. So hopefully we'll also help you throughout your terrible PED moments. And I see people in the chat saying, that sounds exhausting, Matt. I know. So Gabe, now we're going to talk about the winner and all of that stuff, of course, but I have, since you're on here, as a UK resident, I know you're still smiling. Has PED kicked in for you at all, or is this whole UK coming second thing still carrying you through like a happy week? What's going on?
Obviously it's been really happy. It's been great coming, I am, with my friendship group back home, I am the Eurovision weirdo, obviously. So everyone asks you about the contest in the week after. And I've had a lot of I told you so moments. Those of you who follow me on Instagram will have seen that I had a slightly influenced I told you so moment that I posted in the middle of the night on Saturday evening. But PED has hit a bit the last few days, especially like I think Thursday, Friday this week, I was sort of feeling a bit down. it is, to go from such, because the high is so much higher, thanks to the result, it's a bit like, crashing down. So this feels like a bit like group therapy in some ways. But it's just the glow and the attitude back here is amazing.
I was going to ask, like, how when you talk to people, everyone's just excited, or is it really people are saying negative, you didn't win? What is the vibe in the UK right now after this fantastic result, the second place in over 20 years?
So, and by the way, shout out to the 2 people who just followed me on Instagram as soon as I mentioned my Instagram. But it's just incredible because people are sort of realizing what we have known all along. And in some ways, it's maddening because it's like, I've been telling you this for years. Why did none of you listen? Everyone's like, wow, when we send a good song and we stage it well, we actually do well. Europe doesn't actually hate us. Like, duh.
So no more Brexit excuses?
Yeah, although one ridiculous thing that a few right-wing columnists have tried to claim is that it's because of all of our support for Ukraine that Europe has decided to vote for us. It's like, I'm sorry, you don't get points in return for anti-tank missiles. That's not how it works. We actually sent a good song and everything went well. But yeah, so overall, though, people here are so happy for Sam. He is super popular. Everyone loves him. Everyone thinks he's a great ambassador for the UK. I think everyone has realized that when we take the contest seriously, but don't take ourselves too seriously, when we actually just go into it with like an open mind and, looking to enjoy ourselves and put something really nice together, really authentic, then we do well.
Exactly. Which, go ahead.
We knew all along.
Yes, we all knew it, but it's nice that we, again, have that I told you moment. So I think we all kind of have that here. And we're going to talk more about that in just a moment. So the week has been over, and I see some people in the chat. I'm trying to find that one in particular, talking about Alicia Michelle, who had her own live stream yesterday, I think, and that she was talking about the organization of Eurovision and how she was not happy. Just to let you know that we got a lot of people reached out to us and asked what's going on, how you doing, after some of the things that has come up online and has been discussed. People found out about it. And one of the things that people definitely wanted to know more about, and I'm going to just keep it brief because, I want to focus on the good stuff. First up, I want to say that I'm very happy and thankful, even though it has been so reduced that ES United was allowed on site, even though it was just me by the EBU, and I know that they don't have to let us in. So we're just stoked that we were able to do that. I had a lot of people who were so nice to come to Turin anyways, who didn't get into the press center, still help us out with coverage at ESC United. I'm eternally grateful for that as well. So thank you for everyone. There has been a lot of stuff going around in terms of organization, what has happened. We're going to talk about all of that first. But I want to bring everyone's attention just real quick to a tweet that went out by WeBlocks on Saturday, right before the show, I believe, or during the show. Let me bring that up here. I think you can see it now on my screen. So they were saying, thank you for all your super chats on YouTube this week, which will go towards paying our server bill. Unfortunately, the EBU has sent out this memo below. Thankfully, our Eurovision passion is stronger than the ongoing efforts to suppress fan media. And as you can see, please note that you cannot monetize any live stream in the online press center at Eurovision Song Contest in any capacity, including taking donations. And one of the things we talked about, came out right before the grand final. We've been live streaming for 10 days now. As a matter of fact, we've been live streaming for years now. It has been what we are known for. We do it basically all the time throughout the year. And it was a very surprising email that we've gotten. And I do know that WeBlocks was also approached. I'm going to share something else in just a moment on site as well. And we were a little bit confused. The reasoning and how it felt to us a little bit selective, for a lack of a better word. And one of the things, why do they the warning after the contest that's greedy and ridiculous? And WeBlocks responded, an EBU rep stopped by our desk a few hours before the grand final, after we've been live streaming for more than a week, as I just mentioned, to raise the issue. It's certainly read as petty and mean-spirited parting shot. And that affects a lot of us here in the press center, that we have our own niche market where we provide free services. I'm going to explain again, why we don't believe this is an accurate statement by the EBU. And because one of the things that they shared in the original statement is that you're not allowed to commercialize some of you. I'm going to get the wording exactly in a moment, but we are not commercializing more than anybody else. We're recovering our costs. And this other tweet that I have here, I think highlights that very well. What is the difference between the selling of journalistic services and that of a newspaper selling their journalistic services in the form of a newspaper, online content behind the paywall, etc.? And WiwiBlocks asked the EBU representative who approached me with this. I approached him with the very question and simply said that's different, with no explanation, an inadequate answer for an arbitrary and vague policy. So unfortunately, that certainly hurts us a lot doing coverage. We will continue doing our coverage. It'll not deter us, but it certainly felt a little bit more of a targeted, I don't know if I want to call it attack, but certainly approach towards the fan media. Because again, what about people, getting paid for their articles behind the paywalls? Any sort of advertisement you have on your videos or your articles, there are so many different ways, freelancing, where people do get compensated. And our services at ESC United, always free. All of our articles, free. Our discussion board access, free. Our YouTube, our streams, everything is free. Nothing of it is commercialized, and we don't depend on it, and we'll continue to provide them. It is just, very difficult for even any sort of recovering our costs, which are thousands and thousands of dollars every year just to host, for maintenance, for equipment, all of these things, you name it. So it was very a little bit disheartening, and we're hoping that this was just a one-off thing at the end, and next year they're going to go back to them, because we do love what we're doing, and we do provide coverage around the year. And not just and we bring people to the contest that would have usually not find out about it. So I think it's in everyone's best interest to support us. So So at this point, we are not allowed to accept any super chats while we're at Eurovision. While during the off season, of course, we are. If that's something you want to support us with, you can support us on any other platforms, whether it's Patreon or becoming a member on here. It's up to you. We don't ask for it, but if you do want to do that, please feel free to do so. I just want you to understand one of the hurdles that we are overcoming here right now, and that was one of the part of the struggles that we've had there. Thank you so much for the super chat. I wasn't even asking Kalismos Ado Simplicius. Love that name. No question, but the support I really appreciated. So that is one of the things that we're dealing with. There are other things that are going on. I think Alicia Michelle mentioned some of the other things that were going on. Gabe, I know you were not necessarily part of the on-site press, so your exposure or understand maybe is limited, but you were there at the venue. You saw 18 shows. How many shows have you been to now? I forgot.
So I went to 5 shows live, and then I saw another bajillion rehearsals.
Yes. So you at least have something. So based on more from a mix between doing some help with ESC United and attending as a fan, how was your experience?
So I've now been to the contest 3 times. I went in Kiev in 2017. And God, I hope we can go back there soon. I went to Lisbon, and I went this year, of course. Now, there were some things about the contest that were great. I mean, the essence of the contests is amazing in and of itself. In the arena, it's always brilliant.
Yeah, you could be in a barn or someone would be brilliant, probably, because just the energy that comes out from the fans and the excitement is just, if you've never been live, you have to experience it at some point. But go ahead, so sorry.
But there were some things that did disappoint me. I mean, in addition to the stuff you've already mentioned, I think you put it very well. The work that goes in, it's obviously really disheartening to see that being put in the difficult position that it was put in this year. And my thoughts go to, you know, outlets who have people doing video content where they require a cameraman, and then they're issued with one accreditation. So suddenly somebody's got to be their own cameraman. You know, things like that actively harm the content that's produced, and that's a shame. In terms of the organization of the event, one really consistent complaint that I share was the Village, which had an incredibly poor selection of outlets, and the ones that were there were quite expensive and not very good. The security was incredibly arbitrary. On multiple occasions, I went in with friends, and one of them would just one of us would lose our power bank. One of us would have a power bank taken off us. Everyone else would be let in with them. Same thing went with hand sanitizer. It was incredibly random. One mistake that they got away with, because there were thunderstorms forecast all week for the final day. They got away with it because the thunderstorms came the following day.
Oh.
The fan zone, the Euro Village, where the big screens were, was all grass. If there had been a thunderstorm on that day, the entire thing would have been turned into a mud bath, and then nobody would have been able to be there for the final.
Yeah.
It clearly hadn't been thought through. The only entrance to the Village was a full 10 to 15 minutes walk from those screens. The queues were enormous. They were so big, I've spoken to people who genuinely started to feel unsettled and unsafe, because there were people, it was heaving. They were not equipped to deal with it. And then even trying to leave was, you know, people were getting worried because it was just such chaos. I think the entry for the Euroclub venues being close to €20 just meant that the actual Euroclub in Turin was the Huntsman pub, which was not an official venue, but everyone sort of adopted it because you didn't have to pay ridiculous amounts of money. And even the artists were going there by the end of the week. I think they really dropped the ball on a lot of the stuff that goes around the contest that really makes it, you know, an event in the city. And I think it was such a shame. It felt like a lot of things were cobbled together as an afterthought. Be like, oh yeah, do that, and that'll do, you know. And I'm not placing blame anywhere because I don't know who was responsible for what. You never know what organizational problems there are. I'm sure plenty of unforeseen things, having to plan for potential different COVID scenarios and stuff. You know, I think that a lot of the stuff around the contest itself this year, the stuff that you don't see on TV, was really disappointing. And I had a brilliant week, and I loved being around everyone. You know, it was so great to meet so many people as well, to meet the artists. But organizationally, it was all over the place. Yes. It really was. And that was frustrating, I would say. Yeah. I don't know if that was your experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. And of course, we're probably spoiled rotten to a certain extent, because everything we're talking about is a privilege, right? Going to Eurovision is a privilege. Being in the press center is a privilege. Having a Eurovision village is a privilege. They could just say, we're just going to have the contest and nothing else. All of that stuff, I get that. I think, though, the contest has grown so much that a lot of these things have become part of the whole experience, and it's no longer just we're just going to add that because we're nice. There's certain expectations that have been created, and it brings a lot of money in tourism to the city and to the country, and exposure to the contest. So I can only compare to some of my experiences in other years. I've been doing it for a little while, and there were a few things that I think worked actually quite well. Others where I'm like, I don't know what was going on. And one of the things you just pointed out is the Euroclub. Now, I've always thought the Euroclub itself, at a certain extent, was too exclusive for my taste, meaning only press, only delegations, only staff, you know, and like a handful of fans that get in line quick enough to get tickets. I always thought it should be more open. So I liked the idea of having, a dozen venues that are Euroclub kind of situation, because I'm like, I want to have it more inclusive. Granted, we used to have a Euro Cafe, which no longer, I guess, is a thing with OJE, and we had the Eurovision Village, which in many cases was often also serving as a gathering for these individuals. However, when it was announced that we had 12 Eurovision club venues, as you pointed out, they weren't really venues. One of them, like, here's a random mall. It's Eurovision. And then you drive by at 1 p.m. and they're already closing down. There was no events, no performances, nothing. They just assigned, designated as a Eurovision venue, and it wasn't nothing of that sort. So that's why I think a lot of people went to that Huntsman Club you mentioned about to make it like the default unofficial gathering, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Gabe, it was never on the list of those venues, right?
They just started playing Eurovision music because they realized it was full of Eurovision fans. They were like, put on Eurovision music. They stayed open until like 6 o'clock in the morning. And every night there was thousands of Eurovision fans there. On the final night, after the final, a bunch of the artists were there. You know, it felt like, I mean, I remember going to the Village in Lisbon and Kiev was so enjoyable. There was tons going on. They were packed full of stuff. There was loads of things in there. And, you know, like Lisbon, you know, I had this really nice memory on the day of the contest last year in Lisbon, it's sitting in the sun in the afternoon in the Village with it was like a pint of, it was like a sort of cider, I think it was a cider or something, you know, with all of my friends, really nice atmosphere. There's, you know, the place was buzzing. But, you know, this year, you compare it to this year, as someone mentioned in chat, they ran out of water and soda at 6 o'clock on the final day.
Oh, wow.
So it's boiling hot. You have thousands of people pouring in 2 hours before the thing even starts. There's no water left. It's just exceptionally bad planning. And it's dangerous, quite frankly, because, you know, someone's going to faint by 10 or 11.
Yeah. And one thing I'm trying to remember, certain things in the terms of organization, you kind of, I mean, every broadcaster also relies on the culture within the country. And we do know that Italy in particular is more like last minute, like we're just going to make the changes today, tomorrow. It's kind of often like how they do things there. I've learned that the hard way in many ways. So there were often just last minute changes and no one knew they were going to happen. And that, I think, made it often a little bit more tricky for us to navigate around it. Not all of it was bad. Some of them I even liked, but often it was just very, very confusing. And you found out after the fact. And that was a difficult thing for me. The one day, the day of the first dress rehearsal, they just moved the entrance of the press center completely. We had to walk an additional 20 minutes. And we got the notifications as we were walking towards them. Like, okay, so we got to walk 20 minutes just to get to, you know, our entrance, and we all going to be late. And there was an hour wait to get in there. And so there were a lot of that kind of issues. So, yeah, I wouldn't call it the smoothest organization. At the same time, it's very easy for us to pick apart every little thing that didn't work. When there are things that did work, I will say, a speech for press center, probably the best snack bar I've ever seen at Eurovision. They went out with all these different food options there. I remember Lisbon. We got like a patch of grass and a really eco-friendly apple. And no one ate at the cafeteria. And they had like 3 sandwiches sitting there. And it was terrible. So we all just went to the mall next time. So they certainly had... I really enjoyed the press center's layout and what they brought to the table there. Granted, it was very buggy, meaning I saw ants and spiders and everywhere. So that was a little odd. But yeah, it was just a little bit more tricky navigating around. The communication wasn't on par from what I've seen in the past. Again, the last minute thing. Same with that's one thing I didn't necessarily like, was the fact that halfway through the rehearsals, they decided to stop mandatory COVID testing. They're just like, you know what? We have really low number of cases, so let's not do it anymore unless you have symptoms. You know, who's going to voluntarily then get a test? So, no, testing was required. And sure enough, at the very end, everyone got COVID, you know, like at the last days. So it was just, you know, not the best decision in my view. And a lot of people were kind of relying on, you know, feeling safe going to the press center. And I do understand also some of the criticism that we're throwing out there is COVID related. They couldn't do maybe as much COVID related certain events. But not everything can be just thrown at that. That's not the only reason, of course. Yeah, Laura Pausini got COVID. Some of the Weeby Blogs people got COVID. Like, there are several people who got COVID. I was around people who got it, and I was super freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, I have it. No, because you cannot come back to the US if you have COVID. Fortunately, my test came back.
At the same time, it's like, for example, take the press center. There were more people in the press center last year when things were much stricter.
Yes, that is true. And we were told, that's one of the other things that was very confusing. And I'm hoping that the EBU will shed a little bit more light on the whole press situation. Because one of the things was said, we're going to have less media. And this, to be fair, did not just impact fan media. It impacted also other media. A lot of people had at least media outlets from the Netherlands. They usually had at least 2 or 3, a cameraman and the person, the host. And they had to do it all by themselves now, which, that's not an easy thing to do. But we were told initially that it's because there was a 400% increase in interest. And we're like, oh, that's rough, man. That's a lot of people. However, when we were in the press center, it was mostly empty the entire time until the very last day. The final of the Eurovision Song Contest. And even then, my table of 12 seats or 14 seats, 2 people on it. And so it was still, I don't understand how there was such a demand, and yet we had so much empty room. During the press conference, Martin Osterdahl, the executive supervisor, that question came up, and they asked, why is there so little, press allowed? What was the reasoning behind it? And they said, well, COVID and cutting costs and all of that stuff. I'm like, well, we had more people last year. And then the problem is a lot of individuals, I'm so glad it wasn't me because I didn't check, who were giving on-site access throughout the process were switched from on-site to online and were not informed. So they showed up, some of them in Turin, ready to pick up the accreditation. Like, oh, you're online. I'm like, I didn't know. So I would have been in that same boat if that would have happened, because I didn't check again if I would have been switched over. And the questions were asked about it, and we didn't get a clear answer on that either. So hopefully there will be some clarification on that as well in the future. So and that, yes, Simon is in the chat. Actually, Simon asked that question. So hi. So that was a very good question. So we're hoping to get a little bit more clarification on the process. And I know that the EBU said in their initial statement that they will revamp and rework the rules for the coming year. But I'm hoping that they will see the value of independent media, because we are the ones that not only covered through the entire process of the rehearsals, not just, the last 2 days. We are there to provide coverage when nobody else is. That same applies throughout the year. We keep people hooked. We are the ones that bring people on board throughout the years as well. And I think we do serve a vital, we have a vital place within this market. So hopefully we're hoping that this will be, there will be some acknowledgement. We're not expecting special treatment. I understand it's a privilege, and we're very thankful that we're still allowed to cover it. But I'm just, pleading my case here, saying I do think we not just it's not just that, oh, I want to take a picture with the artists. And I understand there were issues in the past, especially when we had so much fan media where people just showed up for the press conferences to take selfies and then disappeared. And I do believe that the EBU needs to take a closer look at who's providing content, not just the numbers, but also what content you're providing, and during those 2 weeks and throughout the year, and use that to assign accreditation accordingly. I think that would be the best option in my view. Did I miss anything else?
I think you pretty much covered it. I think it does run deep. And I think, obviously, as you all have seen, there is a lot of disquiet and a lot of concern amongst, everyone, really. So it'll be interesting to see what the response to that is. Everyone wants it. Everybody wants to do the best job they can, and everyone wants the contest to succeed. I just really hope that going forward, things will be constructive. Things will operate on that basis, and that, the less unpleasant surprises, the better. It felt like there were a few too many this year. So hopefully next year, just if everything could be smoother and clearer, and take into account a bit more about the practicalities of what different people are doing and about what access different media needs to do their job. That is, I think that would be very much appreciated by everybody.
Yeah. One question that came up by Katie McCauley asking, what's your take on not seeing the rehearsals and only seeing the final rehearsal? Just to clarify, in previous years, the press had access to the first individual rehearsals, which take place the first part of the first week. Then the second part of the first week is the second individual rehearsal. So each country get to rehearse for 20 to 30 minutes. And then the dress rehearsals start. The press, we had access to the second round of individual rehearsals. Only the first ones were closed to the press. And apparently, some of the delegations have voiced their hope that this would be the case. That's according to the EBU, because they feel as that's a lot of pressure. It's for them to getting comfortable with the stage, and they don't want to completely judge by the first product, what they're seeing. Keep in mind, even before the acts take the stage, there are technical rehearsals even before that with the stand-ins, and so they had a little bit of practice. Last year they actually changed it already. Because usually have 30 minutes. The first run through was blocked for the press, and then we could see the second, third to judge. Now they're completely shut it down. It's easy for me to say, I want to have access to everything. Let me in. I want to see it all, because on paper I do. But if I put my fan hat aside and just be like objective approach there, I'm like, I can see where they're coming from, because you watch the betting odds, you see the articles, and I almost feel guilty to a certain extent. You remember last year, Gabe, our pictures in Romania, went viral. Like we had because Roxanne was rehearsing, we were all just like, oh.
That was the dress rehearsal, though. That was the jury show, wasn't it?
I thought it was the first. I don't remember.
It wasn't the very first rehearsal.
Oh,
it was the reason it was so shocking is because it was actually because remember, there was also Ukraine and Malta performed again that night. There was a few of them that performed again because a bunch of them had problems. That was in the jury show. That was I'm sure it was the jury show for the semi-final when that happened. Oh God. The thing is that, I hope people didn't interpret that negatively. The reason we were like that is because we could tell something had gone wrong.
Yeah.
And so we were all like, oh no. What?
Oh no. It was heart wrenching, so because you want them to succeed. No matter what you personally think about a song, you're like, you want every artist to bring the A game. And, we just had an honest reaction. I'm like, oh, this is bad. And I think, of course, they used a conveniently timed screenshot when we all had this moment, or so you cannot sometimes control that. So that was very interesting. Simon is actually asking a question. What's up, buddy? Did you talk about your difficulties being 3 different places at the same time? I insinuate or implied it, but I didn't say it. That is true, because I was the only person in the press center on-site access. Usually I have myself. Even last year we had very little support. Melanie was at least there to run around and do all the press conferences, the social media aspect and then we had someone else, Boris, writing a lot of the paper neck as it's happening. So there's a lot of pieces that they can move around. Just having 2 or 3 people makes the world of a difference. Having only myself there, I couldn't do it. I had to do, some live streaming. I had to do social media. I had to do so many things. And unfortunately, we were also not allowed to collaborate with other individuals. So you have to do it on your own. And that was another tricky hurdle to overcome. So that was very unfortunate. Thank you so much, Alexander, saying, please do live streams every Saturday until the 23 starts in December, so we don't have to deal with PED alone. So, Alexander, we will definitely have frequent live streams. Can I do every sometimes I'm not there on a Saturday, but we can move it around like Friday, Sundays, and I will kind of my intent is here when I'm not around that I have one of my SMEs here maybe even host it on their own. I'm so nervous about that because they're just gonna go rogue. What's that smirk about, Gabe? You already have an evil plan in mind?
No, I'm certainly not making any evil plans. I'm definitely not going to ruin your reputation while you're gone. No,
okay. That is good. So what? And now we talked about this organization quite a bit. We wanted to talk a few other things here as well. But I know there were a lot of questions, and there was on a lot of people's minds, ours as well. I came home from this. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not sure deflated is the right word, but certainly I was anxiety ridden a lot throughout this experience, and it was probably the most difficult Eurovision experience I've ever been through. And in some ways, I was glad it was over. Of course, I'm always sad to leave, but I was so just physically and emotionally drained that I'm like, I have to go home. I have to go sleep. So now that a week has passed, I feel a whole lot more rejuvenated and ready. And again, I want to be very clear. I know it sounds like I'm just picking on it. I'm eternally grateful for all the opportunities given to us, and we support the artists, we support the EBU, we support everyone. We're just here to kind of plead our case why it was difficult, and hopefully everyone involved can learn from this experience, because I know that things are always fluid and you learn from the experience. And I think this was a great learning experience for everyone. So yeah, Stephen Candle is asking, given the EBU statement about online hate towards the artists, do you think they will limit viewing of rehearsals even more in the future? So here's the thing. The statement does not really address artists. It was a statement almost more aimed towards the EBU as well, because let's be real, the whole stage situation happened, and there was a lot of stuff happening. So it wasn't just the artists, it was also directed towards the EBU and some of the hatred and vitriol that happened towards them. So I don't think it was just necessary towards the artists, because it was never said it's the artists. It was a very vague and a broad statement that could encompass basically everyone and everything. So I don't think that limiting the viewing to the rehearsals will fix that. That's not how online world works. That's not how social media works. That's not how life works. Because if you close all of the rehearsals until the dress rehearsals, then everything will happen. Then people have even less to go by and are less prepared. And then it's going to be even a bigger outcry. The more you limit stuff, the worse it gets. That's usually how it works everywhere in the media. That's why freedom of press is so important. I understand there are limitations in terms of you want to get people comfortable, but you're also talking about the EBU provides, this platform where 40 plus broadcasters are involved, and they have a right to know as well, because who is funding these endeavors? The broadcasters. Who are they funded? Say it, Gabe.
The taxpayers.
Exactly.
Of Europe.
Exactly. Not my taxes. It sounds like
me. I personally am paying for Eurovision. So all of you thank me, because I've paid my license fee to the BBC this year. Therefore, I have funded Eurovision. Just me, no one else.
Yeah. So that's what it is. So I don't think limiting will make a whole lot of sense, because what I will say, I meant to actually at that point, I can see the case them blocking the first individual rehearsals. I can see where there is a valid point to be made, and as much as I want to see it would be great. I still think that the press center should be open if they have meet and greets, because it looked very, very sad, the meet and greets, having such an empty place. Even then probably won't be as many, because a lot of people will not show up for the rehearsals, but us, the independent fan media, we will be there with belts on, supporting the contest, supporting the artists, and supporting art. And I think it would mean a lot to the artists. I know a lot of delegations were missing that as well, because it is exposure for the artists as well. And they need to have that, because these artists, they're not just going to evaporate once Eurovision is over. They want to have a career after that fact as well. So they want to sell albums, they want to make music, and they want to maybe return at some point. So that's why we are saying support your local Eurovision artists. They're not going to disappear, after the contest is over. They want to continue to make music, and they need your support. Anything else, Gabe?
Yeah,
I know I take all the content and you got to fill in the blanks.
I don't know. There's so much. There is so much more that could be said, but there is a time and a place. And I think the most important thing is that we did everything we could to give everybody, as good an experience as possible, to try to give people a piece of, I think for me, all along, I think part of it is about making, you guys watching feel like you're there with us in some way. That was part of the reason why I loved running from the shows to the streams so I could tell you about them straight away afterwards. It's about me, and I hope we still were able to do that. And hopefully in future, we'll be able to do that more easily. But I think we just really appreciate all the support that everyone, gave this year. It was a privilege to be part of it. And, I think ultimately with a community like the one we have, we can't lose at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to see so many familiar names in chat, to, get all the support is massive for all of us.
And as a very great and famous philosopher once said, we're all in this together. Okay. Right? I think it was Shakespeare.
Yeah, no, that was Aristotle said that originally.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay. But let's move on to some happier things. The jury voting.
Yeah.
Okay, I think everyone knows what happened, but if you lived on the rock, you hibernated for the past week. Let me just catch you up real quick. So basically what happened during the grand final, the EBU released a statement and mentioned that 6 of the participating countries were found to create an irregular voting pattern. And that led to the jury votes from these 6 countries to be completely removed and then replaced by a substitute aggregated result. We'll talk about those things in a moment. Now we finally, a couple of days ago, we got to see who these alleged juries were. And Gabe will be right back, by the way. He said he has to run to the door. So I'm just going to put myself on for the moment. And basically, we know who they are. And the EBU provided a few information. We're going to talk about it in just a moment. I'm just going to go ahead and share what I have here on my screen. So hopefully everyone can see this, but let me zoom in a little bit as well. Boop, boop. Oh, that was too much. So as you can see, it's Azerbaijan, Georgia, Montenegro, Poland, Romania, and San Marino's votes were removed. And a lot of these spokespeople were not even aware that was happening, and were told as they were ready to give the points. The Romanian spokesperson, she was in particular completely caught off guard. Her video went a little bit viral. But these 6 countries were accused, or whatever wording you want to use. I want to be careful how I use it, but voting for each other and irregular voting patterns. And as you can see, Azerbaijan gave 12 points to Poland, Georgia, Romania, Montenegro, San Marino. That's their top 5. Let's move on to Georgia. Oh, look who they have top 5 into: Azerbaijan, Montenegro, Romania, San Marino, and Poland. Then moving on to Montenegro. They voted Georgia, and here, like, well, we have to put in Serbia. No one's going to believe us if we don't put Serbia high. But then Azerbaijan, Romania, San Marino, and Poland. Moving on to Poland, San Marino, Azerbaijan, Romania, Montenegro. Then they're like, okay, even we can't give Georgia too many points, but they still, have it in there as well. That's how they did it. And then Romania, once again, top 5. San Marino, Poland, Montenegro, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. Oh, and San Marino, of course, I forgot about them. Look at that. Also, top 5, the same thing. Romania, Georgia, Poland, Montenegro, and Azerbaijan. So in most cases, slightly different versions of their top 5. And that ultimately, let me keep scrolling down here. The EBU explained what irregular vote is. And as you can see, a deviation from the norm. Does the result reflect the overall taste of the other professional jurors? So if you see like these 6 countries vote completely opposite of what everyone else is voting for, that is one red flag, basically. Voting patterns. Are there visible patterns of voting within the jurors? That's another red flag. Irregularities. Did the jurors observe the rules of the contest? Reoccurring patterns. Do other countries repeat similar voting patterns? Are there beneficiaries if deviations occur? Who benefits from the results? And they said if 2 or more of these questions will be answered with yes, that pattern is considered an irregular, and the votes affected by such irregularity are removed. And that's basically what they did. So that is what has transpired. And of course, we didn't know immediately because, Martin Osterdahl showed up on screen 3 times, giving points, while 3 other jury members were able to share their points. Keep in mind, very important, the points you just saw are from the second semifinal. And then ultimately they decided, since they had to remove from the semis, they also had to be removed from the actual final show, and the aggregate results were used. The aggregate results is basically an average of how other countries have voted to be in line with it. Certainly Sweden heavily benefited from that, I believe, in the semis. But Sweden would have qualified anyway. It just got a huge boost of points at that point. So that is what happened. And of course, some of the broadcasters are denying it. Now, keep in mind, there are 3 things. There is the artists are completely innocent, we believe, right? Because they have no power. They just came to do their music. So don't let it out on the 6 acts representing those particular countries. The broadcasters, you can aim some more criticism at them. We don't know how much involved they were, if it's just behind closed doors jury thing, how involved or aware were those broadcasters. I'm not completely giving them a free out of jail card. I'm just saying that's all can be a little bit tricky as well. Let me bring in Gabe real quick here. Welcome back. And
Hello.
And then the jurors, but they're 100% at fault here, right? Because they deliberately were part of this and the deal making. And Romania actually now has threatened to withdraw from the contest. They're denying such allegations. This broadcast in San Marino, I forgot their initials right now, they left this long tweet thread also saying, we voted as per rules, blah, blah, blah. We're very unhappy. Of course, I kind of have to come forward and say that. So is what happened. The rule's supposed to be, in case you're wondering, each jury member votes on their own. They're all in a room together, but they're not supposed to talk to each other. They just do their own ranking, give them to the notary that's in the room, and they calculate. They're not even supposed to know the final outcome until the results are being shown. And that is how it's supposed to go. If we believe the allegations, that means that did not happen. Those 6 nations actually collaborated, for the lack of a better word, trying to increase the odds of qualifying. Out of those 6 countries, 3 of them ended up making it through, which were Poland, Azerbaijan, and Romania. Interesting enough, none of them managed to make it into the top 10. Just a very interesting observation there. But that is what happened. So we're going to talk a little bit about this whole process. Do we agree with it? Because, do we agree with removing the votes? Do we agree with the aggregate results? Of course. Hello World saying, I disagree that the jurors themselves are always to blame. We don't know if they decided to vote like that themselves or that they were told to do so by the broadcaster. I will say to this, if they're being told by the broadcaster to vote that way, you can just leave. That's what my thing. If you go along with something like that, then you become part of the problem. If I were to say, Gabe, when you come on this live stream, you have to say this, you have to say that, and you have to agree with me all the time. And if you don't, and Gabe had no other choice. To me, I would think Gabe would say, screw you, Matt. I'm going to go on Twitter and say what an asshole you are. Or something like that.
I can do that anyway, if you like.
True. No. So you get my point. I understand in some countries, it's a different situation, but you don't have to be on a jury if you feel this is inappropriate. So now I will not let the jurors off the hook because they were told by the broadcaster. I don't believe that is a fair out of jail card either. So what was your first thought when you saw all of this, when the email came out with the actual? I mean, we had an inkling because the Belgian broadcast, the Flemish one, already gave us a little bit of a internal source heads up, but we finally knew after the EBU released that statement all the details. What was going through your mind, Gabe?
So when I read it, I thought, well, this is a slam. It's so obvious. It's a slam dunk. It's so obvious.
Sorry, Yusuf said, Gabe, blink twice if you're in danger. That's more than twice, but okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, but it's because I'm in a lot of danger. So what you can't see is actually Sean is just off camera that way with a gun, and he saw. Okay, he's telling me I need to. No, Sean is not here. He has definitely not got a gun. He's definitely not pointing. Anyway, the 6 countries, I think, were bang to rights. And when I read it, it was so bloody obvious. My favorite bit was Montenegro putting Serbia really high and being like, okay, that'll throw them off the scent.
Yeah, they'll never get it.
It's like, come on. The funny thing is that even when you take into account the jury, even if you take into account the original points that those juries, cheatily gave, it wouldn't have changed any of the qualifiers. So it's like, it doesn't pay. Crime doesn't pay. Certainly this type of crime doesn't pay. And I think the broadcasters, I find it very funny that they're complaining, because everyone can see what has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, come on. It's so unsubtle. What it does prove is, if you cheat subtly, it won't be enough to make a big difference. If you cheat unsubtly, you get caught. So at least it shows the system works. And whatever thing they're using to check on this, I imagine they probably have some sort of automated system that flags suspicious patterns. It worked. And it's good that it worked, because these votes absolutely should have been discounted, and I'm glad they were.
Yeah, so we agree on this one. We certainly agree, both of us. The EBU did the right thing here. I wish I would have done a little bit more communication in the beginning, like, we're working on something. Please stay tuned for additional updates, rather than just be like, technical difficulties. I'm like, it's not technical difficulties. So that was a little bit confusing, but I understand that they cannot come out right away. They have to do their due diligence and all of that stuff. I understand that. So ultimately, we all agree that, or most of us, I think most people will agree that this was the right decision to do. We all understand also the rules of the Eurovision Song Contest, that all 40 broadcasters signed up. Like, if jury votes would be removed, that they would use that aggregate outcome. The question is this really the best option, Gabe? Do you think there is no other way? Should the EBU consider an alternative option? Because it does seem a little odd how then they all basically vote the same anyway if we use the aggregate results. So because they use a similar concept. Some of these actually were then identical, some of these juries as well. So it's kind of like, okay, this is also odd. Do you think this was the right thing? Do you have any other thoughts what we could do in the future?
I think it was the best option of a bad bunch given the situation. I think there's a few things that have been suggested which I think would help. They have been suggested. Most of these things were suggested by Sean, and I'm now going to rip them off. Number one is simply increasing the size of the jury to 10 or 12 to try and make it more. So you've got to, basically, the bigger a conspiracy has to be, the more likely it is you get caught. And that would mean you need twice as many people to do the same thing. The second, which I think personally, I'm a fan of this idea, it would be difficult to administer, but they should do it, is nobody, not even the jurors themselves, should know who the other jurors are until after the contest. The jurors should not be in a room together. They should not be able to speak to each other. They should not know who they are. I think they should be completely blind without any external influence whatsoever. Essentially, bring them all to the broadcasters HQ without telling them first who else is on the jury, right? Put them in different rooms or put them in cubicles or something, like we're doing, like it's in school and you're back in isolation because you've, I don't know, called the teacher a nasty name or something, and just keep them so that they cannot influence each other. It's incredibly difficult to plot if you don't know who your co-conspirators are.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
So those are the things. Those are the things I would do personally.
Yeah, and there are other options. I mean, I know how feasible they are, but there could be really like the broadcaster provides a pool of people, like 20, 25, and then the EBU picks randomly some of these candidates, so you cannot upfront know who will be actually on the jury. It will be decided last minute by the EBU. Anything like that thinking, like that needs, maybe the EBU can choose the, I don't know. I know then it gets a little bit like, then the EBU decides the outcome. There'll always be conspiracy theories, right? So I do think it needs to be as, I don't want to say random, but certainly as difficult as possible for anyone to cheat, especially the more people you have, the more difficult it's become to cheat because there are more sources and you have to convince more people, and one juror can just completely, that's not cool, because then it's going to be more difficult to hide that kind of thinking. In the past, before the juries were brought back in 2009, like in the olden days when there was no televote, they often had like demoscopic juries. Do you think that would be another thing would that make a difference? Should we have like a mix? What is your mindset at from that perspective, Gabe?
I think basically, we have to think about it from a logistical point of view as well. You can only extend this concept to a certain point before it becomes incredibly unwieldy. Bear in mind, any arrangement that you have for a country, you have to multiply it by 40.
Yeah.
So the logistics of it scale dramatically as soon as you make any changes. So you have to think about things that can be reasonably expected of, San Marino RTV in the same way that they're expected of the BBC or RAI or these huge broadcasters. So you have to basically come up with solutions that are cheap in terms of logistics and in terms of money, but will also just make it as difficult as possible for jurors to collude with each other within countries and across borders. It's difficult, but it's difficult to do. But the main thing you can do is just keep the jurors apart from each other. You're never going to remove the bias from people's minds, but you can remove the bias from groups of people.
Yep, that's certainly true. It's funny how we're now doing this all, even we haven't talked about Ukraine at all yet, but the winning song. But we have so much to talk about because so much has happened in this 1 week. One question was asked by Steven. Matt, do you think this could have happened in semifinal 1-2, Bulgaria and Greece? I will expand on that question actually, and throwing it out there to us, Gabe. There have been, of course, now because last year Poland and San Marino also suspiciously traded high points. So there comes to thinking this has been going on for a while. And that expanded even more. People talking about, well, we understand often with televote, it's difficult to break out things like Romania and Moldova or Greece and Cyprus, right? But that the juries continue to give each other 12 points as well for the most part, although this year was an exception here from Romania, Moldova, who gave 0 points to Romania. But in other usual cases, they almost always give each other 12 points. And that has never been addressed. We understand this is less of an effort like, okay, let's vote for each other this year and rank each other. It's just almost like a thing for them, right? Because it's almost like the same culture, same country. So it's a little different there. It's apples and oranges a little bit in my view. But the point still stands. Why our juries always give each other 12 points every single year when they clearly are not influenced as much by this, this cultural thing. Same goes for Azerbaijan, Armenia, just the opposite way around. The political situation there, they always, even the jurors, put each other dead last every single time. Those things have always been kind of brushed off by the EBU, right? I wonder, with all of this that's been going on right now, do you think it is time or the EBU will do an overhaul of what's going on? Or do you think it'll be more like, well, we addressed this, we're just going to continue business as usual? What do you think is happening?
Well, it's difficult because you could pick any six. For example, you could pick any 6 jurors from Azerbaijan, and they would most likely be predisposed to not like the Armenian song. How do you unpack that? I don't know. But if there's no collusion and those 6 jurors have all come to that conclusion by themselves, which it's actually not inconceivable that they have done in that case, there's a limited amount you can do about it. You can't force a country to rate a song highly. There are others. The Greece-Cyprus one is grating, especially in years where, where there's clear cultural things, like, for example, in the way that Serbia mopped up the televote in the Balkans. Of course it did. But that song is not, it wasn't because it was from Serbia. It was because the song, and, it's sung in a language that most people in the Balkans can understand. it's been a massive hit in all those countries. Like, these things make sense. It's about when, well, you can't remove all those biases. You just have to kind of try and cancel them all out to a degree, to a point where anyone can win, which I think is where we generally are. The problem is when you start having artificial biases based on perception of the results. You know, I think one thing I remember from 2017 is Portugal and Bulgaria gave each other 0 in the juries. It just, now it's impossible to tell. You never know what a juror is thinking. But things like that, you see them and you think, okay, you know, that's, you know, and they're the only countries to not give the other ones points. Everyone else did. You know, you saw bits of it this year. You see it every year where certain countries, if they're a favorite, the jurors vote down the other favorites. You know, things like, but ultimately, it's easy for us to identify the problems, but the reality is, beyond the few things we've said to remove like mass collusion, there's the solutions are incredibly limited. If you get rid of the juries and only have televote, you'll have a different set of problems. If you do the opposite, you'll have another different set of problems. All you can really do is limit it to the best of your ability, and then, you know, just live with the fact that some of these things are going to happen. I don't think there's any world in which you can stop Greece and Cyprus giving each other, you know, large numbers of points.
See, and I agree for the most part with you. However, there is a caveat. I do believe that the EU can do more, because initially, when the juries were brought in back to the contest, Cyprus and Greek jurors didn't give each other 12 points in the beginning, right? They slowly just crept back up and then gave each other 12 points all the time again. So, and then the EBU just accepts for what it is. I do think you cannot completely fix it. I understand that there will always be bias. There will always be, you know, it'll happen. But I do think it should be the EBU's responsibility to minimize it to their best, you know, the best effort to minimize it and review it every, like, if you see like for 10 years in a row, you give 12 points to the same country and every juror put it like in first and second, there needs to be some sort of like, maybe the jury system needs to change. You cannot tell people how to vote. That I understand. But you maybe can, rather than telling who to vote for, make it less likely for people to cheat. And you can say, well, anyone from Greece on the Greece jury would give 12 points to Cyprus. And we're picking those two right now, and I'll probably feel attacked. It's not just us. We understand that. You know, there were others as well. The Nordic countries often come to mind as well. I'm just using this as an example right now. I just think there must be something they at least need to try, and just saying, well, it is what it is. It's usually not a good answer to me in that sense. Like, the EBU needs to keep the integrity, because it is this in particular really hurts the contest reputation and the results, because now everyone say it's political, it's just, you know, predetermined, blah, 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 blah. So just by removing these odd votes helps, because that will make other jurors in the future rethink it. Granted, we all know we have no official proof right now, but we all know this has happened in the past, and I think most of us know it will probably happen again. And everyone has questions about this topic in the chat at ESC United, of course. Let me see here. I know there were a few comments. Is block voting really a thing, or am I just tripping? Faith, you're not tripping. Well, block voting, how to explain this? What's the definition of block voting, I guess? Because the block, they're talking about the Balkan, right? The Balkan block. Vote for each other. Yeah, they have often a lot of similar taste in music. They share a certain culture and often share the same music scene. So when you see, let's put 22 aside, because Serbia was very popular all across the continent. But with Hurricane, or who was the year before? Kruna, right? Those songs got virtually 0 points from the televoters, except like 12 points from like 6-7 countries, right? And then 0-0, and then like one, you know, for the most part, either all or nothing. So you can make a case, yes, Hurricane is huge, or was huge in the Balkan countries. So of course there is some certain sharing of votes. And that is something we're talking about, more affected by the televote, less by the juries. And that's why we had the juries brought back in the first place, because of that block voting. You can make the case for the Nordic countries to a certain extent, you can make the case. We had Turkey back then. Turkish diaspora just, went crazy. They always had virtually top 10 results for the most, or top last at the score, just because they have the Turkish vote. And that's why all of that come into play. So it's a very, very convoluted, tricky, and impossible thing to fix. Am I right, Gabe?
Yeah, it's like, which problem? It's a bit like whack-a-mole with these things. Like, if you fix one thing, you will cause yourself another problem, and it might not be in a way you expect. Somebody said in chat, what's the problem with removing a jury? What problems would that cause? It's like we said, televote has its biases. And also, televotes can be exploited, because we've seen this before. A certain country that rhymes with Azerbaijan was caught doing this, like giving out SIM cards and brick phones. And then mysteriously, they started doing worse from the year after they were caught. Fun coincidence. But I remember I did a tweet about that once. But it's still exploitable in some of these countries. Take Malta, for example. Malta has a population of 60,000. How many of them are going to vote? Now think about how many people in Malta you need to influence it. If you're a broadcaster who can buy a lot of SIM cards.
Yes.
All you need is a small number of people, pay them for an evening, and bang, you've got yourself 12 points in the jury. So these things are exploitable, no matter what you do. It's not about removing all the ways in which, obviously, in an ideal world, you would. It's not about removing all the ways in which they are exploitable. It's about mitigating it as much as you can and finding a system that balances it out so everyone has a fair shot. Yeah. Now, can you make it perfect? No, but as long as we preserve the core point of the contest, which is if you send a package which is good enough, you will do well, which we have preserved successfully this year and in the past, then I would argue that is a success. You can't make all of these problems go away. All you can do is make it so that then mitigate it as much as possible.
Yeah. That's a good word, mitigated. And I understand it still can be frustrating at times because, countries like UK, Germany, Austria, Switzerland often get when they really, really don't deliver in the televote, they get 0 points. You will never see Lithuania get 0 points in the televote for that reason. And I understand it feels unfair and it feels like, come on. And you can make a case they never deserve 0 points. But you get what I'm saying when, there are getting Ireland, UK, it's just what it is. So it's virtually impossible. But I do believe don't throw out the baby with the bathwater when you say get rid of the juries. Go do this, do that, because you're just going to create a new issue. And there is a reason why the juries were brought back in the late 2000s, because the contest reputation was quite damaged just based on 100% televote. That doesn't mean the juries are perfect, especially in its current incarnation. I would say we need some fixing. We've had them now for 13 years, right? And I think it wouldn't be a bad idea now to reevaluate how we're going to do this. I think the contest has evolved. The situation is different now. There must be other ways to fix this. So all I'm asking for, I don't expect the EBU. I'm like, oh, I got the perfect solution. All's good. World peace. But I do believe that the EBU constantly should look for ways to improve upon the system rather than just, it's working okay for now and we'll just get along. Let's not ruffle any feathers. I do think it is their obligation to make it as fair as possible, and that'll help ultimately the contest reputation overall.
Yeah, I think one thing we can definitely agree on, because I've seen a few people saying that X, Y, and Z is the real winner or whatever else, is that the song that won the contest by almost 200 points is the one and only winner of the contest this year. No matter what voting system you had, that wouldn't have changed. Someone did comment on, do you not think it's suspicious that Ukraine got so many 12 points? And I don't think it at all, especially since I came home and everyone I spoke to, if they'd voted for somebody else, they had also voted for Ukraine. Like, no one was surprised Ukraine did that well, because everyone was like, well, did you vote for Ukraine? Yeah. Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. There is, and we're going to talk about it in a moment as well, because we all have a lot of thoughts on this, actually. I just want to go for the last topic, and then we do an open Q&A as well. Any idea now? We all know Ukraine has won. We all know the current terrible, terrible situation that Ukraine find themselves in right now, and the brave faces they put on. And talking to the folks in the OG Ukraine folks that were there, it was one of the most, touching things. And the moment they were all you kind of put into words how emotional this was. And I know this contest is just such a small thing compared to what they're actually going through. But we do know that due to the current terrible circumstances, hosting the contest next year it's not guaranteed. And at this point, I think it's fair to say not likely, even if, the war ends in this moment in time. We're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about rebuilding, we're talking about financial. So there's a lot of other issues comes into play. So I think most of us believe the contest will be held elsewhere, with most likely, or like the hope is with the Ukrainian broadcaster doing a co-hosting thing, which is almost like similar to if Australia were to win, because we're never going all to Sydney for the contest. They would then work with some other broadcaster. There were some rumors out there, right, Gabe, about what's going to happen?
So the big one today, Twitter has got a new one of these each day. So I'm really excited to see what surprise they have for us tomorrow. Today, the rumor is that Glasgow is that the OVO Hydro Arena in Glasgow has been basically put on hold by the BBC or someone else in the event that Ukraine cannot host. They've got this big gap in April and May next year where they're not holding any events, where things are being rescheduled. Now, the reason this is doubly, the other thing I'd point out, the reason why this is doubly interesting is obviously because the UK came second, but also the BBC Scotland office is literally 5 minutes from there. So if the BBC and the Ukrainian broadcaster had some kind of discussion about hosting the contest, it would make sense for it to be near their office, somewhere where they can base their staff, somewhere they can base the operations, somewhere they've got all the infrastructure there. The Hydro was actually pinpointed as if the UK were to host a potential venue, along with the Manchester Arena, with the two that kept coming up because of their location with the BBC offices in Salford and Glasgow. So it seems credible. And if the Ukrainian broadcaster was not able to host it in Ukraine, I think, and it's right that we give them the opportunity to see if that's feasible or not before we, go into overdrive on where's it going to be? This would seem like a very likely option. I think as for hosting it in Ukraine, I agree with your assessment, Matt, that it won't happen, not just for the reasons you stated, but also because I think for a much more administrative reason, I think the EBU's insurers will just say, no, we're not insuring the contest if you host it in Ukraine. I think I would love for it to be there next year. And, the sort of romantic in me says, wow, what a statement that would be if they've won by this time next year and we all get to sort of go to this, free Ukraine. I just don't think it's going to be, I think this conflict will drag on for some time, and I don't think it would be resolved by that time. Yeah. When we get there as well, I mean, they've got cities to rebuild, they've got a country to rebuild, and we should support them as much as we can to do that. So whatever it is, it needs to be with the Ukrainian broadcasters' enthusiastic support, whether that's in Ukraine or elsewhere. But right now, this Glasgow rumor looks very credible, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I know that they just said that conversations will start on Friday with the EBU, which then, of course, was yesterday. So this is, of course, all speculation. But what I think right now is they just reserved it in case they will actually get it. And the thinking is the UK, because how it works. Actually, real quick. Glasgow would be perfect for it. That was not the comment I wanted to bring up. Forgive me, it moved again. Sometimes I hate this chat thing. Katie, where are you? It's moved. Stop talking, people. Every time you talk, the thing moves. But she was saying, actually, in the movie, the Eurovision Song Contest movie, that's where it took place, right? That's a cool little...
Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. I was going
to say, although one thing interesting, the venue is in Glasgow. Obviously, in the movie, they claimed it was in Edinburgh. But no, that venue is in Glasgow. It's actually, I've been there, and it's got another one right next to you. You've got the Hydro and the Armadillo right next to each other. So you've got the Armadillo, which is like a conference center. Some people mooted it as a potential press center, although that would be odd. It doesn't really fit that. It's not the kind of venue that it is. But it's really central, great location. Glasgow is obviously more than capable of handling those kinds of events. It handled the Commonwealth Games a couple of years ago. So that they have experience of it. I'd like to think the BBC would know what they're doing. I mean, I never want to put too much faith in my own country to do anything.
I do, actually. Right? As much as they don't know how to pick songs, right? I mean, putting 22 aside right now, they know how to put on a show. They have the resources, they have the talent, and interestingly enough, they get Eurovision, right? To certain, but they just don't get Eurovision. Like when it comes to themselves, it's just really a weird thing. So I do believe, though, and you can also put your UK hat off as an objective observer of the Eurovision Song Contest, Gabe. Even then, I think it would make sense to give it to the UK. In case you guys are wondering how this works, if the winning country refuses to host, the EBU then has the right to pick a host country, and they will then get bids from all over the continent. Spain sends in theirs, Netherlands sends in theirs, UK sends in theirs, and then they look at them like, okay, kind of like what the national broadcaster would do with different cities, just with different countries, if you think of it that way. And then they pick what they believe is the most suitable one. I do think that the UK will easily be able to put forward a suitable bid. Glasgow, we just talked about, or whatever it may be, and then the EBU would be wise to pick them, since they already came in second place, to prevent any sort of outrage or upset if they're going to give it to Malta. I don't know, something really random. They wouldn't give it to Malta, but France. So
I'll be back in 2 minutes. I've just got to quickly run. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Okay. So that is one of the things I'm thinking. So it makes perfect sense for me to actually put it in the UK. And that's why this new Glasgow thing makes sense. Now, keep in mind, it's very premature. I think they're really just like, hey, I think there's a good chance the UK could be hosting this. Let's put this big chunk of time aside. The arena is available, and they're willing to put it on hold for the time being. I think that all makes sense. And me personally, I would be over the moon. I'd love to go to Scotland. It's on my bucket list. Before the whole COVID thing, we had a trip planned. Iceland, Ireland, Scotland. And so at least I get to do that. That would be Glasgow. I know it's sometimes my tongue. I know it's Glasgow. Do you think that Spin would be a suitable host if UK don't offer the host next year? Spin? Spain. Spain. Yes, I think. I think so. I mean, I still think that that they should go down the list then. If UK refuses, then give it to Spain. The good thing is they have second and third place, a big five. And the reason why they're a big five, so they would all be able to host it. So I think those would be really good options. So yeah, it is certainly, I think, in the stars, and I think this could easily happen. And I would be thrilled. Now, granted, these are still just, what is, maybe, but I think it would be a really fair and good solutions. I said it either has to be UK, or it would be kind of more of a symbolic thing if they would host it like near, in Poland, near the Ukrainian border. But I do think this would be a fair and great outcome. Hopefully, this will come to fruition. We got to be a little bit more patient. We're not going to find out for quite some time. But they'll let us know hopefully in due time, because people got to plan their trips, right? I try to remember when Turin was announced as the host city. I know they pushed it back and pushed it back and pushed it back, so we got a later announcement than before. I hope that somebody talks about the Eurovision Village. I hope they're going to have a roof, because we all know it rains a lot in the UK and in Scotland. I'm sure it rains even more. I don't know what the weather is on average in May in Scotland, but I think they probably should plan to have some kind of roofed options there as well. Krakow, some season. Yeah, Krakow would be a great option, right? Something like that. So I think it would be a great option. And Grid Gape is back.
Hello. So sorry, I won't be disappearing again. It was just sorry about quick interruption. Although what I would say, if we're talking about and if Sean or Roy are watching, they're about to put their heads in their hands. If we want a UK city which avoids the rain, I've got to make the case really quick for Newcastle. They're building a new arena, state of the art, with a conference center attached. So there's your press center, there's your arena. It's got loads of hotel rooms. Everything's walkable. There's locations in the city center where you could have the village. It's got like great culture, loads of touristy stuff going on.
That's a population
of Newcastle.
Yeah,
including the towns which are essentially part of it. The total like Tyne and Weir urban area is like 1 million. Newcastle proper. Newcastle proper is like 300,000. But there's literally all surrounding towns. There is no actual discernible gap. So you've got, and it's a gorgeous city, and you can all stay at my parents' house. So I mean, I saw, we can fit how many in here right now? I'm sure 386 of you can fit in my parents' spare room. Now, people in chat are saying, be serious, but listen, what are the requirements? Enough hotel rooms? Newcastle has it. A sufficiently sized arena with room for press and everything else? Newcastle has it. An international airport? Newcastle has one. You've got really good connections to other UK cities. It's, so personally, I'm going to be shilling for Newcastle until the moment it's announced.
Keep talking. I just spilled my drink. You keep talking. I'll be right back.
In that case, I'm going to keep shilling for Newcastle then. In all seriousness. And the other thing, we talked about the rain. Did you know that Newcastle is the driest city in Britain, except for London? So if you want to avoid rain, that's the place to go. In all seriousness, though, I think I would be incredibly surprised if it ends up in the UK, if it's not Glasgow or Manchester. Slough will host. Something tells me Slough is not going to host. I've just got a hunch. Also Glasgow voted overwhelmingly against Brexit, which is good. But actually, Newcastle voted against Brexit as well, so it's got that for it as well. So yeah, Newcastle 2023, guys. But yeah, so it's going to be, realistically, if it was in the UK, it would be Manchester or Glasgow. That's where the BBC's infrastructure is. That's where all their staff are. It makes too much sense for them to. They announced the points from Manchester this year. Well, Salford, but
fingers and toes crossed on my end. That would be awesome. Now, I think we have a few minutes left to talk about anything you want to talk about. The open Q&A session and how it works at ESC United in the chat. Of course, super chats always answered first, but if you just, I also want to point that out, and we said it a lot during our live streams, but it is of utmost importance to us if you like this video, like it in all of our videos, because that helps the algorithm. Same as leave a comment. Just a very short thing saying, this was a great video or whatever, I agree, I disagree, whatever it may be. Just keep the dialogue, because that really helps us stand out, because that's our bread and butter, staying on good terms with the algorithm. So and of course, subscribe if you're done already, but I'm sure you're all subscribed already, because otherwise why you're here. Now, of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. All right, so I am going to bring up some questions. First up here, and if I don't answer, then post it again. Ali is saying, ESC United, do you think Australia will stay in the contest? I'll go first on this one. Duh. I know. I think next year was it this the last year? The 5-year contract is next year. The 5-year
next year. They got dispensation until 23.
23, yeah. They will stay in there. There's zero chance they're gonna kick him out. I don't even know why we're even talking about this, to be honest. Gabe?
I think the only real point, I think, for this one is, will they just do the same thing where they say, okay, you can stay for another 5 years? Or are they just gonna, I wouldn't be surprised if they just said you have indefinite leave to be in the contest. Yeah. So at this point, they're an institution.
You cannot just kick him out. It's supposed to be year by year. This year, now we do 5 years. It's just like that, kind of going slow here, getting people, because there's still always be people like, why are they in the contest? But they do the same thing with Israel and Azerbaijan. So it'll always be a thing for some. But I think we're at a point where people are happy and comfortable with Australia being a permanent part of the Eurovision family. And I say, let them stay. Let them stay. Exactly. Next question here. Have the BBC put their bid out to host next year? If not, would you look bad for them due to Spain already putting theirs in? I guess kind of addressed it, but go ahead, Gabe.
So, I mean, nobody's put their bid in next year because there's been no bidding process. If broadcasters want to press release and say they want to host, then sure. But, a lot of this will have come from some news outlet will have gone to will have spoken to their local broadcaster and said, so if you had the opportunity to, would you want to host Eurovision? And some, spokesperson has gone, yeah, sure. And then that has then snowballed into this country wants to host Eurovision. Like, obviously these countries want to host Eurovision. Like, obviously the UK wants to host Eurovision. The big broadcasters want to do it. I think that it doesn't really affect anybody who says, oh, we want to host now. It's not about getting your foot in the door first. It's about, quite frankly, it's about who the EBU decides. And more importantly, at least in my opinion, it should be about who the Ukrainian broadcaster wants and what they feel is best. And so I think those things are very important.
Yes, it's not a first come, first serve kind of thing. Like, we announced it first, therefore it would be rude if somebody else gonna voice their intent to host as well. Because as you pointed out, there has been no official bidding process yet. Because right now it's the Ukrainian broadcaster and the EBU having dialogue. So because this is also a little bit of a balancing act, because you don't want to piss off a lot of broadcasters either. If they're just we decided to give it to the UK, they will have to do a bidding process, even though I think it makes sense to give them, to them. It did again. I hate this jumping thing. Here we go. Do you think that Ukraine try to organize for a new and fair jury is the best option for a better result in the future? I don't know if I understand the question. Do you?
I mean, no.
Sorry.
No, sorry. I don't understand.
Yeah, if you can rephrase that, would be, I don't want to give you the wrong answer if you had a different question in mind. There was another question that I was trying to find. Had to put that one. I don't. Can Gabe tell us who Germany reminded him of? Do you get that? Germany, like Miley Cyrus right now?
Okay, right. All I'm going to say is, listen. Oh God, no.
It's not a compliment
for this. It's not a compliment. It's nothing to do with the song. It's just the chord progression. Let me just say, if you listen to the chorus of Rockstars and start singing, what did you learn at school today?
Oh, really? We could be the rock stars. What did you learn at school today?
It fits right over it. That was a. But yeah, that's nothing against the song, which I quite enjoyed. It just happens that also fits.
A lot of songs have like a similar chord progression. Like some of them, there are a lot of songs where you can get that. I'm sure that may be. So I get what you're saying. I didn't catch on it, but I get what you're saying now. I'm like, I forgot about that.
And I'm sorry to everyone in chat. This was their question. Ukraine is implementing a new jury system where the public is voting for who is going to be on the jury. Do you think that's a good system or not?
They can't do that. They can't just change the rules. The EBU has to set the rules. The the Ukrainian broadcaster can't just say, well, we're going to do it differently. You are required to have 5 jurors. So what they're saying is then they have 2 televotes, basically.
I think basically, I think it must be talking about the national selection, because I don't think you're allowed to do that for the actual contest.
Yeah.
So if it's for the national selection, that is actually an interesting idea, where they put forward 30 people or whatever, but then the public chooses who they want. At the same time, it's going to be vulnerable to other biases. We're talking about fixing some problems to create others. If you have a jury that is public voting, if one of those jurors has a big following on social media, well, they're obviously going to win because they can get their followers to vote for them. So personally, I think that system will cause as many problems as it solves. We'll see how it works. They want the public to recommend jury members for their Eurovision jury. Well, I'm fairly sure that's not allowed.
Yeah, no, it's not. You cannot just create your own jury based, you need to follow the EBU guidelines and rules. So unless the EBU says we're going to allow that, which I highly doubt that's going to happen, they cannot just do that. So I highly doubt that is going to be an issue going forward. I like the idea behind to prevent any sort of favoritism and, backdoor deals. But the reality is, I don't think that they don't have the authority to change that. So, but at least a good question. Again, it goes back to the demoscopic jury a little bit, what we're talking about, that this could maybe be the future in a certain extent, where you have a group of people, designated people, do that. But again, then your point comes into play, Gabe. Multiply that effort by 40. And that seems like a very big endeavor. But again, that's not my decision to make. Did you like the TikTok partnership? No. But here's the thing, that's selfish, right? Because the TikTok partnership hurt us independent folks a lot. Less access, and it was very exclusive to them. And as not a big fan of the TikTok platform myself, I was very confused why random TikTok folks were given accreditation. And we heard about stories that a person that is on TikTok, an influencer, like, yeah, about 3 months ago, I started doing a little bit of Eurovision content, and then I applied for accreditation, and I got it. And it seems odd, and it seems a little random, because I understand that they want to reach a broader audience. I just don't know if the route that they've taken, it was as effective, because they've really upset people. Ultimately, they may just look at numbers. We got all these views, I don't know, and all that, It completely worked for us. It just was very frustrating to me, having all these limitations, trying to provide coverage that has a following, and then see all these big TikTok trucks and vans sitting everywhere, having their special access, and no one can see what they're doing and who they are, but they're getting all these special privileges. When, again, money makes the world go round, which takes me back to the whole, like, well, you cannot live stream situation. But it's, to me, of course, it was very upsetting, because we were completely tossed aside for the most part, and replaced by individuals who often don't know or understand the contest. And there should have been a little bit more of a combined effort in saying, hey, we want to branch out to TikTok, help us, the contest, you have a following, let's bring us in, and stuff like that didn't happen. I think they didn't go on the right way with that. But again, I don't think it's an issue of that. It's all an issue about Kaching. What do you think, Gabe? I saw you again had this little smirk on your face. I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
I think you put it well. I'm going to strongly moderate what I actually think.
Yes. Thank you.
And just say I was not very impressed. And it didn't. I don't believe any element of it was useful for the contest, other than putting the rehearsal clips on there.
Mm-hmm.
Which that was fine. It didn't bother me. If you want to do that, sure. Everything else, let's just say it grated somewhat with me. And now I'm going to sort of, that Jose Mourinho, I prefer not to speak. If I speak, I am in big trouble. I'm going to invoke that now. And
you invoke that now. And that is fair. And I know it's And I always try to look at it, of course, for a selfish reason. I'm like, this is stupid. I understand that the EB runs a business to a certain extent and they have to look out for their money. I just think there should have been a little bit more of a merging of those two areas about our need to grow and have a partnership with TikTok and then maintain the relationship that we build over all these years and decades with everyone else involved in the exposure. Because I think that would have been a much more productive approach, I think. And communication is all. The lack of transparency here as well is certainly what is really appreciated. So next question. ESC should switch to the Sanremo voting system, make it 3 components, reduce the televote to account for only 1/3 of the vote, and increase the number of juries per country. Thoughts? So that goes back a little bit to Gabe, what we talked about. Again, the effort and work that goes into it. Sanremo is one show, one broadcaster, one thing. We would have to do that for 40 different nations, meaning Sanremo has 1/3 televote, 1/3 professional juries, and 1/3 demoscopic juries, I believe. And then those 3 juries will then be combined into an overall result. And then we have to do that 40 times. That seems to be like a huge undergoing. So I don't think a third would make sense. I still can see at least the conversation about a demoscopic jury somehow involved. But then even then, I'm like, okay, how they're going to pull that off. But I don't think Sanremo would work for Eurovision terms. Your thoughts?
No. The different shows, if you want to do a demoscopic jury of, so demoscopic, the amount of people you need, think about,
Poor San Marino.
Yeah, for example. But for example, if you have a demoscopic jury of, for the sake of argument, let's say there is 40 people in it, 40 people for 40 countries.
Mm-hmm.
That is 1,600 people per year extra to find, to get in the right place at the right time, to give the relevant access. It's completely unfeasible. I just don't think, again, I think it comes back to, which problems do you want to have? And where we are at the minute is a decent compromise. I just don't see how changing the system that dramatically will help. You've got to also bear in mind that the last change was the first major shift in the format of how the votes were presented in a really long time, like in an exceptionally long time. So really, if you change it again, people start getting confused. The new voting system, people are only just starting to understand it now. It takes a decade or so for it to properly filter through to the public, to be like, okay, now we have the public vote. For the first few years we had it, a lot of people were like, what is going on? Why are they giving more points now?
Yeah.
No, so I think it's exceptionally risky to start playing with it like that. And no one knows what a demoscopic jury is. Sorry, no one has a clue what that means.
No, I even had to first think, what is that again? So I'm not completely against exploring the option, but I see all these things saying it seems like logistically a nightmare. So yeah, but one can only dream. Oscar is asking, which was your biggest surprise in the voting, for good or bad? To me, I'll give a good and a bad. Think about it as well, Gabe. The bad, France. I didn't think they're going to come second to last. I thought they're probably not going to make top 10. So I thought we were like mid-score in the end. I just had a feeling. But the fact that they both flopped with the juries and televoters equally, that was a big surprise to me. And I don't think it deserved it. It's a fantastic song. Looked great. Sounded good. So that was definitely my biggest bad surprise. My biggest good surprise is Moldova, maybe an obvious one. I knew just based on the reaction and the crowds that they would do really well in the televote. Little did I think that they were basically winning the televote besides Ukraine. You always have to kind of put Ukraine aside to the situation that they were right there. Not right there, but number 2, basically. Mind-blowingly exciting. So I'm glad that they did so well with the televote. It was a pleasant surprise because I had a feeling they're going to bomb with the jury. So that was a very pleasant and good surprise that shows, again, a small country like Moldova, they can win it all if things come, the stars are aligned. So those were my 2 choices. Gabe.
So for me, I'm gonna not. You've stolen both of my answers, so I'm gonna have to have a quick think about it. A good surprise. I'm gonna start with a bad surprise. Actually, a bad surprise was the Czech Republic doing that poorly. I think they got ruined by the running order. It felt so unfair. This one left a really bitter taste in my mouth. I think that they got shafted by. I'm going to quickly ban that bot. Give me a second. Hide user. There we go.
But you don't want to naked find girls?
Apparently, naked find girl even in the shithole. But yes, so in also the Czech Republic was screwed over by the running order. They get screwed by the running order every year. If I was the Czech delegation, I would be furious that they got put first again. It's just not fair. They deserve better, and I hope they get better next time. In terms of a pleasant surprise, I actually ended up enjoying Estonia more than I thought I would. And then it doing so well with the televote was actually like, hey, that's actually a nice thing. I would have said, you stole both of my answers, so that each of those was my second most surprising thing.
Sorry.
But yeah, ultimately, the big one, though, for me, out of those two, the way that the Czech Republic was shafted was not acceptable. You can't keep doing that to the same country over and over again. Like, give them a break.
Alicia is asking, which countries need to refresh their national selection? I think we all have the same answer. Let's say anyone but Germany, because I think we all know Germany needs to fix it. So that's such an obvious one that then I don't feel like we should even be allowed to pick that one, because that's such an obvious one, especially after the drum that happened in the first place there with the selection process. And then it was almost like last place was needed, not for Malik, because I feel bad for him, but for the broadcast to understand you guys suck at this. Other shows, I would have to think, I don't know what they can do. Malta would be my thing. Malta, I understand you, and the reason why they went back to national finals because all these artists and networks, labels, they're like, we need to have a national final to expose our artists and all that stuff, our music. That's why they brought it back. But they just need to find the balance, not to send every little thing that they have and then come up with something that was super underwhelming. Granted, the song in the end was changed anyway, so it didn't matter. But that just shows to me that the national final needs to change in Malta. Maybe not have everyone their brother, or like have it's such a small country, a semi-system wouldn't even work. But I don't have the answer to it, how to fix it. You just ask me who needs to fix it, and I will say Malta. How about you, Gabe?
I'm going to say Israel. I think they were actually onto something good, through like Netta, Eden Alen, those kinds of artists. They had it was an interesting format. It kept my attention. And then at the end, they went away and were like, okay, how can we put a package together that's best for this artist? And it really worked, actually. They didn't need to change it. This new system they've got, and that show actually produced like big artists, even the ones who didn't win. The one that jumps to mind is Alali Lahav, who's had a bunch of hits in Israel since then. I think they should go back to the system they had 2017, 2018.
Well, they only had they chose the singer, but not the song was then chosen internally, right? So they should have an internally chosen song rather than the public picking the one.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, I think they should keep. Part of the reason why Netta was so good was because then they went away and they made it something authentic because Netta was involved. Whereas I think Set Me Free was a bit more. It was kind of a Doran medley special. So you still need to have the artist involvement, but the format that we ended up with this year. Now obviously I've made no secret of my feelings about the song and artist that Israel sent this year, but I just really think what they ended up with overall, that national final, you got to the end and it just wasn't very good. So yeah, go back to the old system, Israel. You were onto something good and you've sort of drifted away from it. Turn around.
Yeah, I'm curious. I think there will be some changes because, that's the first time Israel failed to qualify since 2015, right? So they've gotten a little bit used to probably just making it through. So yeah, good luck. Next one, Vako. What's up, my friend? Do you think after Belarus and Russia and now North Macedonia and Romania's last statements, countries like Kazakhstan and Kosovo have a better chance to be in Eurovision? So just to provide a little more context here, obviously we know Belarus and Russia are no longer part of Eurovision, certainly for the time being. And North Macedonia and Romania both have indicated or implied, whatever you want to call it, saying threatening withdrawal. Now, keep in mind, none of this is official. They easily could be back next year as well, but they did make statements for different reasons. Romania's mostly had to do with the whole jury situation. North Macedonia had to do more a little bit about the potential results and the flag incident and all of that stuff. So those are two different issues to have, but they both had like a potential like threat to withdraw from the contest. So the prospect of Kazakhstan and Kosovo joining the contest, I don't know what your thoughts are, Gabe. I think Kosovo is just too politically charged that they would allow for them to join in the near future, because their debut would result probably in other countries with withdrawal. And Kazakhstan, especially in the current situation, I just don't see it happening. I as much as I would love to have them in, I think it's a can of worms that the EBU does not want to open at this point in time. What do you think?
So, yeah, I think, so two things. Firstly, on Kosovo, it depends on, I mean, the EBU can't stop them if RTK became a full member of the EBU.
Yeah,
I think that's unlikely to happen. They apply every year, they get rejected every year. I would love to see it happen one day, but I think we're some way away from it. As for Kazakhstan, Kabar TV did not broadcast the contest this year. I think the chance has been and gone. Unfortunately, the chance was a few years ago when they got into Junior Eurovision. They were doing really well. It felt like, that maybe we'd see them. And they've shown in Junior Eurovision that they are a positive addition. But unfortunately, and as you all know, I am the biggest Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan.
Yeah. I just can't see it happening now, unfortunately. If it was going to happen, it would have already. And the reference group isn't going to change their mind. I think you've got to bear in mind, for a lot of these countries in the reference group, they're countries they can't do anything about. So countries which have automatically the right to join, obviously they can't stop them.
Yeah.
But it's in their interest to not let additional countries in, because it reduces their chances of qualifying.
Yeah.
The reference group has an interest in keeping Kazakhstan out. The reason they don't have that interest in Junior Eurovision is because there's no semis.
Yeah.
That's the sad reality of the situation. And ultimately, if Junior Eurovision grew enough that they hit the limit, which is like 20 or something in Junior Eurovision, they'd just boot Kazakhstan out.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. They're like, sorry, we're full. And because again, they are not a full member. They are only an associate member, kind of like the situation with Australia at the actual contest. But, there is a lot more history with Australia and Eurovision. They've been broadcasting it for 40 years now. So it's not, it's a little slightly different story. Are you worried, Gabe, at all with everything that's been going on this year in particular, that we may be looking at a smaller Eurovision 22, or are we getting ahead of ourselves on that one?
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit, but it wouldn't surprise me if one or two went. I think, the sounds from Romania and North Macedonia seem very real. I think it may be that one of them backs down, but it wouldn't be surprised if we lose someone else. In any case, if I was the EBU, I'd be on the phone to the Slovak broadcaster, the Bosnian broadcaster, the Turkish, and the Moroccan broadcaster, to try and get a few extra in the case that we do lose somebody. Because I think for the EBU, I think 40 or roughly 40 is quite a comfortable number for them. I know there's the hard limit of, is it 46 or something?
I think it's 20 per semi, right? 40, 45, I think, right?
That would be 40. That if it was 20 per semi, it would be 46. Because Big 5 plus
depends. Maybe 40. Well, maybe 45, because it could be. Well, in this case, yeah, this year, because we have the semifinalist, the host. So I don't know if it's 45 or 46. Yeah.
Yeah. But the point, like, I don't think we're ever going to hit that. But we need to, I
somebody says it's 44 now, right now. So that changed
44?
that. Yeah, they brought it down, I guess.
Either way, I mean, we're not going to hit 44 either. Like the normal churn means it's going to vary between like 38 and 42 essentially forever. Yeah, I think that lost train of thought. But I think if I was the EBU, I'd be on the phone to a few broadcasters, being like, "We'll give you, your participation fee will be cheap if you join this year." I think Bosnia, not much of a hope, but Slovakia is worth a call. Hungary is worth a call.
Maybe with Turkey, they're still working with them. Turkey could be a potential returnee at some point. It's a long draft process, and I don't know what the holdup is, but that certainly would be another option. And yeah, I don't know if that would go for. I mean, that smaller one, Luxembourg, didn't they? Was it Luxembourg who put the money aside for next? Like they saved like 30 million euros or something like that, or was it? I think it was Luxembourg. Or was it Monaco? Some country.
There are countries there, right? There are countries there that may be able to be tempted to come back.
Yeah.
And I just think they should get on that. Personally, I think if I was the EBU, like I said, it's unlikely we're ever going to hit these limits. But I don't think, personally, because they've done a 27-song final before and it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
You could instead of if the principle is half the semifinals should qualify, you could make it a 22-song. I mean, 22-song semifinals would be bloody exhausting, but you could in theory find a feasible way of getting 49 countries into the contest, and having a 27-song final.
Yeah, I guess.
Would we want that? Is another question.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it because we lose. It's definitely a real possibility that we're going to lose a couple of countries. I mean, we did have only 37 countries in 2014, you may recall. So it was a lower number, and if I'm not mistaken, let me look that up here. Already canceled out of it. They had only 14 in one semi or something like that, which seems kind of silly almost. Or was it 15? Anyway, it was a really low number for one semi, and it's like you being one of 15, I think. So okay. We had the 5 awkward ones. I mean, yes, we're talking about 1 more, 2 more, with 16 or 17. But the smaller the numbers, the more awkward it gets, I suppose. So it happened before. So I can see us going back to more of a 2014 kind of situation. Although I could see myself, the EBU, trying to prevent it from happening. Because when you have a lower number, it almost reflects bad on that as well. So
especially if you get down to if you end up at 35, 34... Mm-hmm. And you take out the big 5, suddenly you've got 15-song semifinals. And 15-song semifinal, that is light.
That is light, yes.
Very light. One thing that is for sure is, because I can see, I think, there's going to be the kind of that there is churn of countries every year. It's very unusual to have a year where nobody leaves and no one joins. So I think most of the countries that are being grumpy at the moment won't leave. I think San Marino have already confirmed their format, for example. They're staying. I think Romania will probably come around eventually. I know they're moaning now, but I think they'll come around. North Macedonia, again, a lot of these things. The North Macedonia thing, it was all because of that Andrea flowing the flag. Come on.
Dumb.
Just get over it. And they will do. So, things will calm down. It's just, I think cool heads need to prevail, and we'll see a bit of churn like we always do. Obviously, all of us want there to be 43, 44, whatever countries in the contest, right?
59.
We want everyone to stay. Yeah. 3 semifinals.
Well, do it at American Song Contest, right? Why can't we have it here? But I'm kidding.
Let's have a 30-song final.
That's funny. All right.
EBU won't take into account anything that takes UK off from the second place. Okay, can we please... Okay, right. I know I'm British. Can we please stop? There's a lot of conspiracies going around this week about, the EBU is doing... So let's like, and I'm not. I don't mean to go UK local. Since when has the EBU ever done the UK any favors, or vice versa? Like, it's just done. They're treated the same as everyone else. The result is what it is. Everyone agreed as soon as we saw the jury changes, that those jury changes were the right thing to do. You know, the songs that came at the top are there because they deserve to be. That is the truth for every single one of them. And those performances were great. So let's not agitate over whether our favorite song came second or third. You know?
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I'm really proud of our song. I know loads of Ukrainian and Spanish fans, Serbian fans who are so proud of their entries as well. I think that's just, and I think, you know, we should all be really proud of the people who represented us this year. That is the mentality we need to take. Let's not split hairs over which position we came in. We all did well, and we all deserve to do well.
Exactly. That's what it is. It's like both group, like many countries should be very excited about the outcome in the end, and we shouldn't just like turn on each other over this thing. We should just be celebrating it. There's no favoritism towards the BBC, again, as you pointed out, because have you looked at the results for the past 20 plus years? I think I beg to differ. Andy's asking a question. How about televising the jury final and then flipping the running order completely for the Saturday show? Oh, God. Have two shows with different running orders to reduce the impact that results have. So I have a couple of thoughts on that one. Keep in mind, the running order has significantly less impact on the juries. It's mostly the televoters where it's placed in order. In addition to that, the jury show is just a word we all use. It's technically called the second dress rehearsal. It is still a dress rehearsal, actually. We get 3 dress rehearsals and then the actual live show. Could you imagine the producers doing these 2 shows in that order, learning how to do the camera, how to set it up, everyone, and then like, and now we're going to flip it around and you have to do it completely the opposite way? It is never going to happen. This is an actual dress rehearsal. Just the juries happen to vote in it, and we call it flippantly a lovingly jury show, but it's the official name is technically still second dress rehearsal. So this could never happen because they have to prep for the live show. So I understand the thought process here, but again, reality says no, that's not going to happen.
I agree. I think the other thing is what you guys don't see is that even in the jury final, that there are plenty of like things go wrong, things take longer. You know, that it's really important that they have the full show, but also a full show where they and everyone in the audience is okay with saying, "Hold on a minute, something's gone wrong. Let's fix it and move on." You can't do that if it's a live TV show. And you got to remember that then the family show in the afternoon on the Saturday is also a rehearsal, really.
Yeah.
So they need all those rehearsals. If you know, the Friday show is usually not TV complete. It's not ready.
Nope. So it's barely ready when they go live. That's always nerve-wracking. So, yeah, could you imagine? That would be a big mess. Ricardo is saying, live vocals in 2023, yes or no? And will it happen? Keep up the good work. Wink, wink. Thank you very much for the compliment. Yes or no? I say live vocals. Yes. Will it happen? No. I know that the EBU likes this whole like the quality thing and all of that stuff. I am very much against the recorded backing track for multiple reasons because it seems unfair and it seems really just like drowning out. I mean, you can do it with real vocals as well, but at least you can say it gives us the live experience and it just sounds better to me. When you have the actual live singers, it just sounds way, way better. And it's always like, well, you know, we COVID, we need less people, but oh, we can use backing tracks, but now you can bring 5 dancers on top of it. I'm like, come on, I'm not falling for this. So I do know that the EBU likes it and they've been pushing for it, kind of like what the Milli Festival. So I doubt that they will get rid of it. I just don't see it happening. How about you, Gabe?
So I agree that we should have live vocals. At the same time, I also don't think it's going to happen. I think that they're very happy with this arrangement. I don't feel as strongly about it, I think, as you do. I think it would improve the contest to have it. But it's not like when I'm watching the show, it doesn't subtract anything for me. At the same time, I think there's also what you can say is that there is now a benefit to be had from live backing vocals. Can you imagine if Maro had gone on stage by herself and had the backing track, vocals on the backing track? It would have taken so much from that performance. And I think she rightly was rewarded by the juries and the public that there was the 6 of them doing that together. So now what I want to see is countries doing it by choice because they're going to get a benefit from it and because it enhances their performance.
It's the karaoke song contest. And that's what I've always had the problem with people like saying, it's a karaoke contest. Like, it's live vocals. Like, it's not. And now I'm like, I cannot defend it anymore. It really took away some of this, again, bad rep that the contest has with some. I'm like, yeah, I know. They don't always sing live. And it does suck. The rule is, by the way, the lead singer, of course, always has to sing live. And any melody that goes with the main melody has to be sung. So you can't have a backtrack covering up your bad vocals. Somebody mentioned in the chat, Austria this year. Halo, she brought 2 backup vocalists with her.
They just weren't on stage. They just stood in the back and like,
correct. Because she couldn't have had that recorded. You cannot have the melody being recorded. And at least that I'm glad for. But with Malta, it would have been such a smart choice to have live vocals, that gospel-y part that seemed recorded so weak and meh. And then it was a really unnecessary choreography with those dancers that seems like, oh my God. It really felt like I would call the song a Disney parade song. And with the choreography, I'm like, now it is a Disney parade. Just put on a Mickey Mouse hat and the Donald Duck nose and, you're Disney. And they could have had a John Lundvik moment, bring in the mamas or something like that, gospel, make the song pop. And they missed that opportunity, but I digress on that one.
Yeah. One comment I just saw, someone saying there shouldn't be any limit to people allowed on stage. If a country wants to go all out and bring a full choir, why not let them? I never understood this rule. So unfortunately, what you've got to bear in mind is, again, it's about everybody who comes to the contest needs to be put up. They need like a hotel. They need to be gotten on and off stage in short order. If you have 50 people or 60 people on stage, to take an extreme example, how long is it going to take to shuffle them all off? They need dressing room space. They need preparation space. They need time for
microphones, whatever. Yeah, that's equipment. It's impossible. And there's no space for 6 seconds. When you look at the stuff behind the scenes, those rooms are tiny in the back. You don't even fit that many. Like, it's hard to fit 6 people in there. So I understand. I'd love to have a big choir, but it's, again, the logistic aspect of it is just virtually impossible to put that into a play. And I could make it, maybe we can bring it up a couple of people and then saying, hey, we need the room for dancers, and we cannot have dancers and backup singers. Maybe 8 people, so you give you a little bit more wiggle room. Maybe you can make a case, but give it an unlimited number or even like anything above that seems very, very dramatic. I'm sorry.
The other thing is, of course, that even if you increase it from 6 to 8, for example, that alone results in potentially 80 more people who need to be added to delegations, who need to be, like I said, fed, housed, all these different things. It's just, this is why I think they've not touched it. I think they've probably looked at it before and immediately gone, this has so many knock-on effects on everything else we do.
Yeah. And keep in mind, artists on stage are considered part of the delegation. So I think D3 is what artists are. D1 is the head of delegation, I think. And then D2, I forgot what they are. D3 are usually the artists. Every broadcaster gets a set amount of delegation members because, there's not enough room. There's all of that stuff. So you can't. There is limitations to everything. And as much as I'd love to have an actual orchestra or anything on there or like 30 dancers for a performance, it's just in that kind of setup, just impossible. And it also gives at least everyone a little bit of a fair chance because also keep in mind, poor, Moldova, they cannot afford 30 dancers. To give, again, the rich countries another big, big advantage to come up with the biggest show with all these crazy stuff. And that certainly is, there's so many issues with it. Like, we could go going on, but I understand the desire for it, but I don't think reality agrees with it. So that is the issue. So we are out of time already. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll be back next week for sure. But as always, we'll put up videos throughout the week as well to keep you entertained and help you with your PED that a lot of us are struggling with. But as said, the 23 season is already upon us, because the day 22 is over, we can focus on what's happening. And certainly this past week, there was no lack of content. So I'm sure we're going to get a lot over the next few weeks and months. Thanks again, everyone, and have a good night or day, or wherever you are. You get what I'm saying.